Have you ever driven down a lonely road at night, where the only company is the sound of your engine and the shadows dancing in your headlights? There's something about these stretches of asphalt, places where time feels slower, where the darkness creeps closer, and where legends are born. Across the world, these roads hold secrets, whispers of spirits, warnings of danger, and tales of those who never made it to their destination. Tonight, we're taking you on a journey down 5 infamous roads from 5 different countries. Balete Drive in Quezon City, Philippines. A quiet road lined with towering balete trees, their gnarled roots twisting like hands reaching out of the earth. By day, it's just another shortcut for city traffic, but by night, it transforms into a path shrouded in darkness and fear. Many have claimed to see her. A pale woman in a flowing white dress. Her hair hides her face, but her presence is unforgettable. This is the legend of the White Lady of Balete Drive. It was a regular night for Miguel, a rideshare driver working the late shift. His phone buzzed. New pickup request, Balete Drive. Miguel knew the road's reputation. He'd heard the stories growing up. A young woman killed in a car accident, her spirit forever wandering the area. But he shrugged it off. Urban legends don't pay the bills. 15 minutes to midnight, Miguel pulled onto Balete Drive. The street was eerily silent, the air heavy. His headlights caught a figure by the side of the road. A woman dressed in white, her long hair obscuring her face. She raised her hand for a ride. She climbed into the back seat without a word. Miguel tried to make small talk, but she remained silent, her face turned away. His unease grew when he noticed the temperature drop. His dashboard showed no issues, but his breath was visible in the cold air. He glanced in the rearview mirror. For a split second, he thought he saw her staring at him, her eyes sunken, her face pale as death. But when he looked back directly, she was motionless, facing the window. As they approached the end of Balete Drive, Miguel asked for the destination again. No response. When he turned to check, the back seat was empty. He slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. The seatbelt was still buckled, a faint impression left on the seat cushion. On the floor, a single white flower, fresh, dewy, and out of place. Shaken, Miguel drove home and replayed his dashcam footage. At first it was normal, him driving, the streetlights flashing by. But then, as the footage reached the moment she vanished, static filled the screen. And there she was, sitting in the back seat, her face fully visible for the first time, her hollow eyes staring straight at the camera, lips moving as if to say, "Thank you for the ride." As chilling as the legend of the White Lady may be, tales of haunted roads are not confined to the Philippines. Across the Pacific, in the depths of New Jersey, lies Clinton Road, a place where ghostly encounters and inexplicable events have terrified travelers for decades. In the heart of New Jersey lies a road infamous for its unsettling silence and paranormal activity. Clinton Road, a stretch of asphalt that feels like it was carved out of another world. Locals call it the most haunted road in America. Ghostly apparitions, phantom trucks, and chilling tales of abandoned buildings. Tonight we dive into the darkness of Clinton Road, where every shadow hides a secret. They call themselves Urban Seekers, a group of 3 friends chasing the thrill of ghost stories for their live stream audience. One moonless night, they decided to tackle Clinton Road, their cameras rolling and their chat room buzzing. The road seemed ordinary at first. Thick woods on either side, a sense of quiet isolation. But about 5 miles in, their first encounter happened. A sudden flash of headlights behind them. A truck, roaring closer, its high beams blinding. The truck's headlights grew brighter, impossibly close. The driver never honked, never slowed, as if determined to force them off the road. They sped up, heartbeats racing. But just as suddenly as it appeared, the truck veered into the woods and vanished. No sound, no sign of a path. Their viewers were glued to the stream. "What was that?" one comment read. Another wrote, "Did anyone else see the driver? Looked off." They continued down the road, nerves frayed, until they reached the infamous Clinton Road Bridge. Legend says if you toss a coin into the water below, the ghost of a boy will throw it back. Hesitant, they tossed a quarter. It sank without a sound. They laughed nervously, until one of them felt a cold hand on their ankle. They jumped back, cameras shaking, but nothing was there. A few miles further, their GPS led them to a crumbling stone structure, the remains of an old castle rumored to be used for dark rituals. The live stream froze intermittently, cutting between static and eerie shadows. Inside, they found a circle of stones, faint traces of ash, and symbols scratched into the walls. Their chat room went wild. "Get out of there! I saw something move!" On their way back, the truck reappeared, this time from the front, headlights glaring. The driver still wasn't visible, but now a shadowy figure stood in the middle of the road. They swerved to avoid it, their car skidding to a halt. When they looked back, the figure was gone. But in the distance, they heard the faint sound of children laughing. Days later, they reviewed their footage. Most of it was intact, except the moments near the bridge and the castle. Those clips were corrupted, replaced by static and a single frame of a pale face staring directly into the camera. The chat room couldn't explain it, and neither could they. But Clinton Road isn't the only highway with a sinister reputation. Half a world away in India, there's a stretch of road with a name as terrifying as its lore, Highway of Blood, a path that carries not just travelers, but the echoes of unthinkable horrors. India's highways are lifelines, connecting cities and villages, bustling with life and movement. But there's one road that carries more than just travelers. It's said to carry the spirits of the dead. Welcome to NH44, better known as the Highway of Blood. A place where accidents are eerily frequent, shadows move in ways they shouldn't, and many who venture here after dark don't make it back. Prakash was a seasoned truck driver, hauling goods across India for over a decade. NH44 was a route he'd driven countless times, but something about that night felt different. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of rain-soaked asphalt. He adjusted his rearview mirror and noticed something strange. His reflection looked off, like it was staring back at him a second longer than it should have. As he drove through the darker stretch of the highway, he saw her, a woman dressed in red standing by the roadside, her sari torn and stained. She raised her hand, signaling for help. Prakash hesitated. He'd heard stories of ghosts on this highway, of how they lured drivers into accidents. But her eyes, wide with fear, compelled him to stop. "Where to?" he asked, keeping his distance. She didn't respond, simply pointing down the road. She sat silently in the passenger seat, her head bowed. Prakash couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He glanced at her feet. They were caked in mud, but oddly, they didn't touch the floor. He swallowed hard and kept driving, but the temperature in the cabin dropped. His breath fogged up the windshield, and when he wiped it, he saw them. Red handprints smearing the glass, appearing out of nowhere. She pointed toward a small dhaba on the side of the road. Prakash pulled over, but the place looked deserted, its sign swinging in the wind. "I'll wait here," he said, not daring to get out. But she opened the door and stepped out, disappearing into the shadows. Minutes passed. He honked, but no one came back. Gathering his courage, he got out, flashlight in hand. What he found made his blood run cold. A pile of broken bangles, a torn piece of red fabric, and a blood stain on the dirt floor. He rushed back to his truck, only to find the passenger door ajar. The seat where the woman had sat was wet, stained red. The radio crackled to life, an old Hindi song playing faintly. In the rearview mirror, he saw her again. Her face pale, her eyes hollow, her lips moving silently as if whispering his name. Terrified, Prakash sped away, the dabba fading into the night. But the scratching on his roof followed him, louder, more frantic, until suddenly it stopped. When he reached his destination, his truck was empty, except for a single red bangle on the dashboard. Days later, Prakash learned the truth. A woman matching her description had been killed on NH 44 years ago. A hit and run. Her body left near the very dabba he had stopped at. Some say she seeks revenge on careless drivers. Others believe she's searching for the family that left her behind. Either way, Prakash never drove NH 44 at night again. While the highway of blood may leave its mark on those who dare to pass, another road, shrouded in foggy British countryside, tells of a more personal encounter. A meeting with the phantom hitchhiker, whose presence chills to the bone. In the foggy moors and winding roads of the English countryside, legends whisper of spectral travelers, ghostly figures that appear on desolate stretches of road, only to vanish into the night. One such tale is that of the phantom hitchhiker, a story passed down through generations, leaving drivers to wonder, will they be next to encounter this ghostly passenger? Emma was a part-time rideshare driver, using her weekends to make extra cash. On a particularly rainy evening, she received a ride request for a remote area just outside Yorkshire. The destination was an old village miles away from the nearest town. It wasn't unusual for her to get strange requests, but this one felt different, especially when the passenger appeared out of nowhere, standing at the edge of the road, drenched but calm. He was a young man, dressed in outdated clothes, a dark overcoat and scuffed boots. Emma greeted him, but he simply nodded and gave her an address. As they drove, he barely spoke, his face pale and distant, staring out the window at the rain. Emma tried to start a conversation, but he only gave curt answers, his voice barely audible. About 20 minutes in, Emma glanced in the rearview mirror and noticed something strange. His reflection was blurry, as if the mirror itself was fogging up around him. She shook it off, blaming the weather, but then he spoke. "Be careful on this road. It's where I died." Her heart raced, but when she turned to look at him, he was calm, almost smiling. She stammered, trying to ask what he meant, but he simply pointed ahead. "That's the spot." She slowed the car, following his gesture. Ahead, the road curved sharply near an old stone bridge. It was notorious for accidents, with many vehicles sliding off into the ravine below. When she turned back to ask him more, he was gone. The seat was empty, but water pooled where he had been sitting. The only trace of him was a faint smell of damp earth, and a single phrase written in condensation on the window. "Thank you." Shaken, she drove to the nearest pub to collect herself. There she mentioned the strange encounter to the bartender, who listened with a knowing look. "You're not the first," he said. "That's the phantom hitchhiker. They say he died on that bend decades ago, and every now and then he appears to warn others. Consider yourself lucky. You listened." Emma checked her rideshare app later that night, curious about the passenger. The trip wasn't logged. No payment, no record, no trace of the mysterious man. But as she stepped into her car the next morning, she found it. A single damp overcoat draped over the back seat. But the phantom hitchhiker isn't the only spectral traveler to haunt the roads. In the vast wilderness of Canada, there's another hitchhiker whose sudden appearances and disappearances have left witnesses questioning what's real and what's beyond. Canada's long stretches of lonely roads have their own stories to tell. Some are tales of survival, others warnings passed down through generations. But one legend stands out: the story of the vanishing hitchhiker. It's a tale that's been told in whispers across the country, from icy highways to dense, foggy forests. But this isn't just a story about a ghost. It's a story about a message from beyond. Mike, Sarah, and Jake were heading back to Toronto after a weekend in Muskoka. The snowstorm had come out of nowhere, blanketing the highway in white and reducing visibility to a few feet. The roads were empty, eerily so. They hadn't seen another car in hours, and the only sound was the faint hum of their car heater battling the cold. Then, out of nowhere, they saw her, a young woman standing by the roadside, shivering in the snow. She looked no older than 20, her coat thin and drenched, her hair sticking to her pale face. "Do you need help?" Mike asked, rolling down the window. She nodded, her lips blue from the cold. They let her in, wrapping her in a spare blanket from the back seat. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, but the girl just stared ahead, her eyes wide and distant. "Home," she whispered. "I need to get home." She gave them an address, an old farmhouse just off a side road. The friends chatted nervously, trying to ignore the icy chill that seemed to cling to her presence. Jake, sitting in the back, noticed something strange. Her feet were bare, yet no snow had melted around them on the floor mat. When he mentioned it, she turned to him sharply, her expression unreadable. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked again, but the girl just murmured, "Almost there." They pulled up to the farmhouse, its windows dark and snow piled high around the porch. The girl stepped out without a word, walking up to the door. "Wait!" Mike called, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she seemed to fade into the swirling snow. Concerned, the friends followed, but when they reached the porch, she was gone. Mike knocked on the door, and after a long moment, an elderly woman answered, her face lined with age and sorrow. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Mike explained about the girl they had picked up, giving the address she had provided. The old woman's expression shifted, shock, then sadness. "That's impossible," she said. "You just described my daughter, Margaret. She died on this road, 20 years ago." The friends stood frozen as she brought out an old photo, the same girl they had picked up wearing the same thin coat. As they drove away in silence, each of them swore they could still feel the chill she had left behind. When they reached the main road, Mike glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. There she was, standing by the roadside again, her thin coat billowing in the wind. He blinked, and she was gone. The Vanishing Hitchhiker is a story of tragedy but also of remembrance. A restless soul, forever searching for the home she never reached. Is it her way of warning others of the dangers of icy roads? Or does she simply long for the warmth of home? One thing's for certain. On the frozen highways of Canada, not all hitchhikers are seeking a ride. Some are searching for peace. From Balit Drive to Clinton Road, from India's haunted highways to spectral hitchhikers in the UK and Canada, these roads remind us that some journeys are more than just destinations. They're experiences that linger in the shadows of memory. Now it's your turn. Have you ever driven down a road that made your heart race or left you questioning what you saw? Share your local haunted road stories in the comments. We'd love to hear them. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this eerie ride, hit like, subscribe for more chilling tales, and share this video with someone brave enough to take the next journey with us. Stay curious, stay cautious, and we'll see you on the next road to terror.